Thank you very much to accept interview from Glasgow. Now, first of all, can you briefly introduce TRW to our audience?
Well, thanks for the opportunity. I'm very pleased to be here. TRW sales in 2006 were $13.1 billion, which certainly makes TRW one of the largest suppliers in the world. I think some of the unique things about TRW that the audience may not truly recognize is that we're a company that is really based upon a safety-based product portfolio, and I do believe that we have a fairly industry-leading set of technologies that we group into what we call active and passive safety technologies. TRW is certainly one of the more diversified companies in the world as a Tier 1 automotive supplier. We have very significant diversification in our customer base and customer mix. Very significant diversification in our product technology offering, and we're fairly diversified in terms of our geographic footprint around the world. We have a very large and capable footprint in North America, in Europe. We have developing low-cost country footprints to support Europe and North America. A very good position in Brazil, and of course we are growing rapidly in the Asia-Pacific region as well.
Yeah, thank you. That's very impressive. We know that TRW is a company based in the United States, while the largest operation of business and customers located in Europe. So, what's that? Can you give us the main reasons?
Well, it's certainly true. We're based in Michigan. We're listed on the New York Stock Exchange. We have about greater than 60% of our annual sales in Europe, and much less than that, obviously, in North America, and growing significantly in Asia Pacific, as we discussed in the first question. So, why do we have more business in Europe? I think first of all, we have a very, again, diverse customer mix. No single customer represents more than 16% of our sales, and we're obviously well positioned with most of the automotive manufacturers based in Europe. I think that really the real reason, though, ultimately that we have larger sales in Europe is the European market is broadly larger than the North American market. And historically, if you look at how TRW has evolved as a company, I think the acquisitions that we've made and the business development process that we've been on have added significant business positions for the company in Europe. Of course, there was the Lucas Verdi acquisition in the 1998-1999 timeframe that brought us into the braking business, and they have, of course, a very large footprint in Europe. We've added pieces to the puzzle, if you will, in the last couple of years with the acquisition of the Dolphy Metal business to our passive safety systems portfolio. Located in Europe, and of course, if you go back into the mid-90s in terms of how our restraints business, our occupant safety systems business has grown, we did make some significant acquisitions in Europe to help grow that footprint and that position in the marketplace. So it's really not surprising that we have such a big position in Europe. We think it's very good for the company. We think the European market is an important market. The European OEMs play a very significant role in the globalization of the auto industry, so we think that position is good for us. And it certainly doesn't mean that we don't have what we consider to be a very large, very significant, and market share leading position in the products that we participate in North America as well. So, but it has certainly helped the company grow and diversify ourselves. In terms of positioning ourselves for the appropriate profitability, cost, and growth strategies as we've gone through the last several years.
Yeah, that makes sense. Currently, the Asia business only accounts for less than 10% of the whole revenue of TRW. Is that true?
That's true on a consolidated sales basis. TRW's strategy, historical and current strategy in Asia, particularly as it relates to China and India, does involve a number of joint ventures. And we have a number of joint ventures where we do not have a majority position. We have a 50-50 JV position, or we have a 49-51 JV position. So we don't consolidate those sales, and so naturally we don't report those sales as a percentage of the total TRW sales pie, if you will. So our position in Asia Pacific is actually considerably larger, but due to reporting regulations, we don't publicly report those numbers.
Yeah. Since all the automotive industry now focus their efforts in the Asia because it's booming now, especially China as well as India. So what does this new coming up markets means to TRW? The more opportunity?
Well, it's a very important market to TRW. I mean, all the major countries in Asia Pacific are important markets to TRW. Japan's an important market to TRW. Korea is an important market to TRW. China is obviously a very important market to TRW. India is a very important market to TRW, and TRW, of course, is also participating in and trying to grow in the ASEAN region as well. So they're all important markets, and obviously, if you look at Asia Pacific broadly, the two fastest growing countries on a pure growth percentage basis are China and India.
Yeah.
And both of those markets are very, very important to TRW.
Any difference about the China and India market?
Well, I guess I'd start off by saying there's more similarity than there is difference.
Yeah.
When you look at it from an industry expansion perspective. Both are growing rapidly. You know, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of compounded growth rate, they're the two fastest growing countries from a vehicle manufacturing perspective in Asia Pacific. China is projected to grow over the next 5 years annually by greater than 12%. India is projected to grow greater than 16%. Albeit obviously from a much lower starting point in terms of annual output from a manufacturing perspective. If you look at China and India combined together, they represent almost 84% of the projected growth in the A and B segment class vehicles in Asia Pacific. And if you look at the A, B, and C class vehicles together, they represent probably 74% of the projected growth over the next 5 years. So from that perspective, they're very, very similar. If you look at the two countries and you look at the significant players in the vehicle manufacturing area, there's a fair amount of similarity. The Korean OEMs, Hyundai, Kia in particular, are projected to grow very rapidly in both countries. The Japanese OEMs, again, are projected to grow rapidly in both countries. You obviously have some differences in the American companies that are participating in each of the countries, so there's some differences there. And obviously, I think the biggest difference, other than the regulatory environment and what the vehicle manufacturers are trying to do in terms of segmenting ultra-low-cost cars to the specific domestic market, which is obviously a big focus in India, you have a very significant difference in the players, the vehicle manufacturer players that are driving the domestic growth, the Tatas and the Mahindras in India, as opposed to the domestic players that are growing in China. So you've got the Cherries, the Sykes, the FAWs, the Geelys, the Chang'an Group. So these are the companies that are obviously growing in China. And you have in China, in terms of the domestic vehicle manufacturers, far more participants who are trying to grow their business profitably in China than you have in India. And perhaps you have in the short term in China, amongst the domestic manufacturers, maybe more short-term exportation expectations that they have as opposed to the Indian VMs, although the Indian VMs also are certainly trying to build their businesses to support export opportunities as well.
Okay.